my lovely Lego addicts. It has been such a long time. It's been a bit crazy in my life, which is why there's been some radio silence. I am happy to announce that I now have the keys to our new home, so we will be moving in the coming weeks, which is very, very exciting, but it means that basically the entire house is a mess. The new house is a mess. Lego needs to be moved, which is possibly incredibly daunting. Many things will have to happen very, very soon. I am going to be documenting the process of moving the Lego room because it's going to be both a process now, moving everything to the new house, but also there is many future projects for how we're going to enhance and change and make it more exciting. So that is, I cannot wait to show you. Just in case you're really curious, we're actually moving to pretty much the same house we're already in. So the Lego room isn't going to really change in essentials, it's just going to be mirrored. So the space available to me is pretty much the same, but I have slightly more storage space, so there is maybe more of an opportunity to have sets on display on a rotating basis. So that would be very exciting. That is a different video. Today we are here to discuss this old build, and I know, I said I was going to continue building them on a live stream, but it just wasn't possible. But I have finished this build, and I need to talk about it because there is so much to say. It's a whole thing. Like, it's just, I've had so much fun building this. Honestly, it's been a really, really interesting old build to do. I just want to do a huge shout out to the Gaming Fez, Alex. Thank you so very much for making it possible for me to do this old build. And by sending me this set so I could do it. It is on its way back to you by now, but honestly, I'm so glad that I got the opportunity because I've been so fascinated by the pictures of this ever since it was announced, and I just am beyond grateful that I got to actually build it. So, old build of the Hogwarts Castle, which, by the way, is a set you should definitely own and is hugely worth owning, but it's even more worth owning now because you don't need to display it as the microscale Hogwarts. You can also build this and integrate it into your city in case you find it hard to justify. The instructions for this are by bolt.builds. I am obviously not the first one to review this. I was very slow off the mark, but there are some other reviews as well. There is a link in the description, of course, to bolt.builds through Brickable, so if you want to purchase them for yourself, please do. I can highly recommend them. But I just want to kind of talk about this build and also, you know, just show it off a bit. And as always, when I talk about old builds, I just want to put a huge disclaimer out there that building using existing bricks and having an incredibly limited array, especially from, you know, trying to change something that is literally a Hogwarts microscale to a functional modular is incredibly difficult. And obviously things wouldn't be necessarily laid out the way a designer would if they had no limitations. But that's also what makes it really, really interesting. And considering this is the end result, we can all say it looks very good. So that does mean that there are some really, really interesting part uses in this set in order to achieve the look that the designer was going for. So let's get into the actual build and all of the different features to it. So when you purchase the instructions, there's two booklets. One is for this base plate and one is for this base plate. So they're kind of separate. The only thing that isn't actual parts from the Hogwarts Castle is basically the 32x32 base plate and the 16x32 base plate, but luckily they're really easy to get. So you start with this build itself. Now the instructions themselves use the stickered parts, so you don't, if you already have the Hogwarts Castle, you don't have to worry that like the stickers are going to cause a problem. In general, the stickers aren't actually a feature in this build, but sometimes they actually turn out to be an interior detail, which is really fun. But like, for example, here, there is a sticker here that is just because the panel was needed to create it. So, you know, the sticker doesn't actually have a function there. Overall, I think the part use and the joy of building this has been great. I've really, really enjoyed seeing how somebody would tackle a project like this, which to me sounds like the most daunting thing you can ever do. Especially because it's a really limited palette and it's obviously really specific to create something. Last thing I want to say before I dive into like interiors and things is I really like this, and it really reminds me of a university that I drive past every single day to go to work. It's like surprisingly similar, but it does have real like English university vibes, and it's just great, especially this bit here as well. If anybody's ever been to Cambridge and things, you will definitely recognise that shape. But there is lots of other universities that look similar, and actually this bit of the build really looks like the university very, very close to me with this and that. So I thought that was really funny. So every time you start building an old build, you kind of have to rethink about what building's like, because you're so used to building a building that was purposely designed and you have every single perfect brick. Obviously, before you start building an alt build, you have the really fun project of sorting everything by colour in the very least, so you can sort of find the things you did. For this build itself, I actually sorted sort of by colour, but also slightly by part type. So like, for example, all the small elements were in a tub on their own, as well as all the bigger ones, because otherwise finding things is just so impossible. I would definitely recommend, if you are doing this alt build, to get lots of sorting containers, because you are going to really want them. So you start with this build, and this being an alt build for university, it's actually modular completely. So if I just remove all the different layers, you can kind of see it works really well, modular base wise. It's just, you know, it all comes apart really easily. It makes loads of sense when you actually have the building, and it kind of makes a really fun building experience. So here you have sort of the ground floor, which is kind of how you start. And actually it surprisingly took a really long time to start sort of building up a base. And also what I really found interesting to find is that in order to start building, you first kind of nearly create a height difference between the base plate and the build you're doing. So everything interior wise on this side is actually 1 brick high. And not only does it obviously allow you to have a lot of part usage, it also allows for like an integrated rug into the floor and other kind of interesting features that I really kind of enjoyed to build. And again, obviously because you're doing an old build, you want to try and use as many parts from the original set as possible, which, you know, like the rock pieces, they obviously aren't really going to be used, but I think it uses about 3,000 to 4,000 bricks available, which is like quite an impressive number. Definitely towards the end, occasionally I felt like you were building something in a certain way just to use slightly more parts, but overall I don't think it mattered too much. I think it created a great amount of interest. And actually this build is surprisingly detailed for the interiors, which came as a bit of a surprise to me, and I'm really, really pleased to see, because I have done old builds before where the interiors just feel like really random, and actually here, though probably not the most functional university, it definitely has a lot of really nice details. So this is more like a study room with a bookcase, there's like a little living room area, and then there's just the entryway, the big entryway here. And there's even a little courtyard with like a little fountain, which I thought was really, really nice, and such a good touch as well to have that sort of central feature. Use some of these like support bricks that you get. I even like that it creates like little shapes of the grass. I thought it was fantastic. And overall, I think the curb appeal is amazing. My only criticism of this bit, like this actual criticism, is I could really have just done without this like street light. I know I could just remove it, but the build, because you add it so early on, I just kept knocking it over, and it's not the most secure. You know, it's a nice touch, but I don't really think I needed it, and the amount of times I knocked it over actually kind of just annoyed me, so I ended up removing it. But obviously I put it back in to show you, but that's already my only bit of criticism. I think we could have just done without the lantern, to be honest. This is a bit of a post box, I think. Again, I don't think it was hugely needed. If I was going to integrate this in my city, I probably would remove it, but obviously if I was to integrate it into my city, I would also just make this all tiles. But actually, considering there's absolutely no tiles available to do the pavement like an actual modular, I think actually using these plates, because they're the same colour, is very effective, and it definitely doesn't make it look very unfinished. I have done old builds where the pavement in the front felt really random and I really didn't like it, so actually this works really very well, and I'm very impressed with the part use for that. So it definitely has the modular vibe, even if you don't change it for the tiles. So that means that when you build this just with the extra base plates and the rest of the set, it doesn't feel like you're sort of like getting a subpar end result. It still feels really finished, and I really appreciated that. That's kind of like the ground floor. So then you kind of move up into this tower. This is where you get the first instance of like my absolute favorite parts of this build, which is building all of this stained glass. Honestly, so beautiful. I love building the stained glass. The effect of it is just amazing. It's just gorgeous. And yeah, it's my favourite. But not only do you just get to build this little tower room, but there is even like a little way to open it so you can actually see inside much better. So here we go. We've got like a little hinge door there. And again, some stairs. There is some like a bookcase. Actually, the interiors of this room especially, I really liked. Honestly, as I said, the interiors were one of the like genuine surprises that I had. I really enjoyed building all of these furniture out of improvised parts, and I think the detail it gave was definitely worth it. So yeah, super, super impressed with that. So then you've got like the base of the tower as well. This is again a really nice little bit of interior, 2 study desks, which I think felt really, really university appropriate. And actually I really like this light build. I thought it was really good. It's really effective to kind of give it a bit of a central light into this room. So actually this is probably a good example of like, for example, this is a sticker piece, but actually you just use it, you know, the stickers have nothing to do with the build. So sometimes the stickers add a detail and sometimes the stickers are just there, but the part is still usable, which I think is a really good way to use this. And then on top of that bit, there is this, which is a bit like a dormitory. The fridge is pretty fragile, I have to be honest. But there is like 2 beds. I really like the way that the sticker piece is used there because you can really see that sort of skeleton hanging there. And though obviously it's not the most ideal way to build that bed, I think it's really nice. And also it feels like a proper dormitory door with that, you know, on the inside. There you go, you can probably see it with the stained glass. I loved the stained glass builds in this build. Honestly, if there's anything that I love building, it's just the stained glass stuff. I think the effect it creates for Lego is just fantastic. And I think the look that it made here is just beautiful as well as here. So most of the windows in this set actually are stained glass generally, which is awesome. Some really, really interesting like sloped roof techniques. Obviously luxury, there is a lot of slopes in this build because of all the rock work. There were some really interesting fun roof techniques that I absolutely appreciated doing. And then we had this tiny little build on the side, which basically just holds like a tiny bit of an office there with a really nice chair build. And so again, some nice use of the stickered parts to kind of create more of a detail. But then this here doesn't have any use, but actually this removes super easily because it's just on a plate, because you can lay this university out in a few different ways and connect it in different ways. So depending on how you want to connect it, you can actually change or open up some openings so it all connects together, which I thought was really ingenious because it means that, you know, you're not set in the orientation of the set to add it to your city. You can kind of customize it a little bit, or just like make it look the way you think is best. So that really gives you way more freedom to kind of explore and do things. And then this is the top build of the tower. So there you get this really, actually, I think, fantastically designed tower feature and a little astronomy thing. But even the detail here of like having the reddish brown to pretend there is a door into the tower, I really, really appreciated it. So this is probably like my favorite feature. And I really do think that this tower in the middle here really makes it stand apart. Like this and this is fantastic. I think there's various things on this bit of the build that I probably would have changed if I had different bricks. But I think this tower and this, it's just stunning, and it feels so very English to me. Like especially like living in the Cotswolds, we have a lot of like limestone and yellowstone around us. So this is just really like amazingly familiar in loads of ways. So yeah, I really, really loved this bit. And then after I finished all of that, I moved on to the next part of the build, which was this next booklet. So that connects with 2 doors here. So one goes to the courtyard and one connects to the build itself, like through a door. And then you have this huge hall type chapel, but actually this is utilized as a lecturing hall. This side uses all the window pieces, and then this side is just open, but I guess there wasn't enough window pieces to finish all of it. I think it's an ingenious way of using the windows. This part of the build had my absolute favorite bit of technique in it, which is this window. It's basically made out of a load of headlight bricks, like a trans headlight bricks, and they're ingeniously connected, and then again ingeniously connected into the build itself, like a little groove. And I was so impressed. Honestly, that thing made me so happy. So I actually, in a way, I talk about this more often in my reviews. I actually really think pacing of something is really important, and I really feel like because this was the second booklet and this was kind of halfway through, I really felt like some of the best bits of the build were lost, and that was, yeah, really, really appreciate it. Then the roof build here, though a bit repetitive, was really fascinating to see because it's such a different way to, you know, sort of when I have ever built roofs, and it is super effective. I really like that there was a utilization of all these things, because the middle thing that connects lots of things is a Technic beam. So utilizing the fact that the studs at the top are hollow to kind of give that detail is great. It looks a bit weird on camera, but it works really well in real life, and I think the detail is fantastic. And then in here, you just get the most amazing stained glass effect. You get this amazingly detailed chandelier that is just made using the connection of the wings into the side of this build. And then when you move that away and move my favorite feature away, You have the lecturing hall at the very bottom, utilising all the flags, utilising this really fun like tower shape here that is actually really easily removable if you wanted to. And overall, I think that's really where this build shone. Honestly, I have to be honest, when I first started building this, I heard quite mixed opinions on it. But basically, like, building this build myself, I was just so happily surprised. I really, really enjoyed this build. Also, I was kind of building this during a very, very stressful time, and I didn't really build it very quickly or all in one go. I really just dipped in and out of this build, and every single time it was such a joy. There is a good amount of little breakups because you're building the little modular elements, so it's quite good to pick up and just leave. The only downside obviously being that because you have all your parts sorted, there is a lot of storage space you need, but it was definitely worth it. I can kind of recommend this to anybody that is experienced with all builds. Yes, it's a little bit tricky every now and then, and you do need a bit of interpretation occasionally, but overall I do really think this is massively worth your time, even just to kind of see how you can use bricks in new ways to create effects that you do, because sometimes the ways that like arches were joined together, it was really ingenious, and maybe not the most elegant way to use bricks, but definitely very effective. I would do this again happily. I kind of wish I could keep it and put it in my city because I genuinely love it that much. And I am contemplating maybe seeing if I can kind of build a version of either this bit or this tower itself for myself to see if I can add it to the city. But I really, really loved this experience. I do think that my expectations are slightly different just because I have done that many old builds. So I kind of know what's possible and kind of like what level of detail to like expect. I do find when people aren't very experienced with all builds, they may be slightly disappointed that the level of detail isn't perfect, because obviously they're comparing it to real Lego sets which use the exact bricks that they wanted rather than having to, you know, be creative with the parts available. So don't expect it to be perfectly polished or perfectly like the right colours. Obviously if the designer could, I'm sure he would change quite a lot of things with just the bricks that would be much more suitable. But overall, I think all builds are a really absolutely amazing way to kind of do something completely new with a set, have a really fun secondary build experience of a set that you've already purchased, so you kind of get to have as much fun again without spending as much money, and also it gives you either inspiration or a way to kind of enhance and put it in the city. I think this, to be honest though, would sit in a city beautifully. It is quite huge and would definitely tower over, so you would definitely need to think about what you want to sit next to it. But I think maybe even the bookshop, you know, because that would be quite appropriate. Overall, I think everybody will have a really fun time building this because it was fascinating, and I would definitely recommend you go now and purchase the instructions and have fun with it, because I certainly did. If you have any particular questions about this set, do leave them in the comments. I'm very, very happy to chat about it more, but this is just kind of like a whistle-stop tour review of this set, just in between me having to lay flooring and painting walls and all that kind of stuff. But I just really wanted to quickly pop on here and actually talk about it, because there is a lot to be said about it, and you know, you guys deserved to hear it. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so very much for being patient with me. I will be restarting memberships when I kind of can commit to a slightly more set schedule, because at the moment everything is so up in the air, I just can't commit to any regular live streams or updates. So yeah, it's all a bit up in the air, but I will be restarting the channel properly, like sort of when everything calms down a little bit, which will be September, October time, I think. But I really appreciate all of you being here and like coming on this journey with me, because every journey has its ups and downs. So, you know, I'm glad you're here for all of it. And yeah, I hope this review was useful. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Let me know if you've built this, and I will see you all so very soon, you lovely people. Bye! Howdo! Well, that was a dishwasher done. Delightful.